Good evening, everybody. It's 7 o'clock on Monday, January 2nd, 2024, and we will call this meeting of the Sault Ste. Marie City Commission to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Gary,
Here.
Commissioner Bauer, Commissioner Bospis-Rath,
Here.
Commissioner Gage,
Here.
Commissioner Habusta,
Here.
Commissioner Marble,
Here.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Commissioner Rubenstein and Commissioner Bauer did call in advance and say they would not be able to make it tonight, so we'd need a motion to excuse.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported to excuse. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed. Also, if everybody could please silence their phones, and commissioners, if you could stick them in your drawer. If everybody could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Happy New Year to everybody. We look forward to a healthy and productive year. We will move on. We have kind of a, I won't say a short agenda tonight, I guess, but we'll move on into item C, which is public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make any comments at this meeting on any other unscheduled? Okay, moving on. We'll go to item D, which is the consent agenda. Deputy City Manager Robin Troyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Under the consent agenda, 1, approval of the City Commission meeting minutes of December 18th. Item 2, acceptance of the Local Development Finance Authority meeting minutes of September 13th. Item 3, acceptance of the Sault Ste. Marie Housing Commission meeting minutes of November 16th. Item 4, consideration of update to private use agreement. Item 5 is consideration to amend the project budget for the splash pad. Item 6 is consideration of Smart Zone lease agreement with the Economic Development Corporation. Item 7 is consideration of Smart Zone lease agreement with Superior Forensic Engineering LLC. And item 8 is approval of the consent agenda items as presented.
Thank you very much, Deputy City Manager. Any commissioner like any of the items further explained or removed for individual consideration? Commissioner Habusta.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. As the former, I do want to have one removed, but a question on item number 5 is the former director of, or is the current director of the Chippewa County Community Foundation, which formerly owned the splash pad. Do you feel that there's a need for me to abstain from that item?
No.
Thank you. And then finally, I'd like to see item number 6 removed from the consent agenda. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, Commissioner Bospis-Rath, would you like to make the motion? And Commissioner Habusta has requested that we individually consider number 6.
Absolutely. Motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented with removal of item 6.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. And then we'll move into D, consent agenda number 6. City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For commission consideration is a lease agreement between the EDC and the city for space up at the Smart Zone building on Meridian. The fee schedule, or the fee that's within the lease agreement, is right out of the fee schedule as approved by City Commission. It's for a 6-month term. We would recommend approval as presented.
Thank you, City Manager. Any questions or comments for the City Manager? Commissioner Habusta.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand that this is a boilerplate agreement for participants of the Smart Zone. But our agreement with the EDC is less of a participant agreement, more of a partnership agreement with the city. With that in mind, two questions that I'd like to raise, but I do have a deeper concern with this agreement. First of all, why not explore a year-long lease? My understanding that was a question from the EDC board members. Why could we not do a year-long lease with the EDC as somebody who works in the office to not know whether or not we'd be in the same office space in a year would be or within 6 months would be hard, and so I'm just wondering why we wouldn't explore a year-long term. Thank you.
Lease agreement is 6 months because it's our standard lease term. When this was in front of the EDC board, they did agree to the 6-month term, as there were some conversations about possibly moving down to the incubator building on Easter Day. So to kind of allow them some wiggle room if they were to move, we just agreed upon 6 months. But like I said, 6 months is the standard term that any tenant up there has, and we just kept it boilerplate.
Thank you. Additional question. One of the services listed in this agreement is accounting. It's my understanding the EDC currently pays about $13,000 for accounting services. With accounting services, however, being listed, does the EDC pay the same rate? And I understand that they use more services and extended services, but do they pay the same rate as other participants that sign the same agreement?
So the services that are within this lease agreement is a boilerplate smart zone lease agreement. So all of the services that are listed in this aren't necessarily provided by the city. They're saying that these are the services we'll hook you up with. So this smart zone lease agreement is more towards incubator businesses that are or going into the smart zone. So the city handling the accounting for the EDC is totally outside of this lease agreement, and anybody else that has a lease agreement with the smart zone, we're certainly not doing the accounting for that entity. So it's just 100% boilerplate standard template. The services that are listed in there are services that would be provided to a smart zone incubator business through a variety of different sources. But like I said, the services that the EDC is receiving for accounting is outside of this lease agreement. It has nothing to do with it.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Finally, the concern I have with this agreement, the reason why I asked for it to be removed, is that this agreement is signed by both the participant and the city by the city manager. I understand the city manager is acting as the current director of the EDC. And please, I do not mean to say that I think that there's anything nefarious about this. However, I'm just trying to understand why the EDC board president or chairman or another employee of the EDC could not have signed this agreement so that we have a little bit of a more of a clear pathway forward.
I don't know. I mean, realistically, the lease agreement is approved by the EDC board. It wasn't an approval that was taken on by me unilaterally. It went to the EDC board. They assigned it. On the flip side of that, on the other side of the table, the fee schedule is adopted by the commission, which dictates what the fee is for the lease. So
If I can just chime in, Brian was doing that at the request of the EDC board.
yeah,
So I was there, they approved it, and
I mean, somebody else could have signed it, I guess, but I don't know.
so it's not valid without the approval of the governing body, and they did approve it, and we are going to vote on it as well here, so.
At one point, the EDC, when they were in charge of Smart Zone, the leases were not approved by the EDC board nor the city commission. We've changed that. Now everything is approved by the entity leasing, which in this case would be the EDC board, and the city commission approves them as well. If there's a question about the signature on the city side of things, when this is being approved by the commission tonight, that was an oversight. I signed in the wrong spot when Brendan put this in front of me, so maybe I wouldn't.
Commissioner Gage.
I just, I never like to miss an opportunity to kind of give Brian some grief, But I don't guess I see the problem. This is 6 months, we're in a weird position with the EDC because we're between directors right now. It's an interim thing. Their lease is expired. It's a short-term 6-month extension. You know, it's not like you're negotiating with yourself because the money's already set. It's rates that we've already approved. It's not like you're making the decision yourself. Both boards are making the decision for you. I mean, I understand the concern, you know, that it looks somewhat strange, but you're not doing this because of your decision or your discretion. You're doing it at the direction of your boards, which are this board, and then as interim director of the EDC, that board as well. So I understand the concern, but to me, I think it's really just chasing a problem. So
Is that a motion?
motion to support the lease agreement as presented.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1. Moving on to, under item G, business items. City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up first for commission consideration is a request to accept and disperse a request for the Sioux Locks Children's Museum for 2% funding through the Sioux Tribe. Back in March, I believe it was, maybe May, there was a request that came through the commission to sponsor a request for the Children's Museum. That went through the spring disbursement. It must have got held over to the fall disbursement. And we recently received notice that they were awarded. So the process for us is to accept it and then approve a disbursement to the Children's Museum in the amount of $20,400 as the motion states. We look for a motion to amend the budget with a distribution to the Sioux Locks Children's Museum in the amount of $20,400.
Thank you, City Manager. Anybody have any questions on item 1 and business items? Commissioner Bauspus-Rath?
Not a question, I just want to say Chi-miigwech to Sioux Tribe for the 2% to go to the Children's Museum, because this is so exciting. It's a great process that's happening with them, and I'm excited to see it. I went to the little Halloween event that they had, and that was really fun. So, miigwech, Sioux Tribe.
Anybody want to make that motion? Commissioner Habusta?
Motion to amend the budget with the distribution of tribal 2% funding to Sioux Locks Children's Museum in the amount of $20,400.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Moving on into G, business items number 2. City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission consideration is approval of a deficit elimination plan for capital projects fund. Kind of the long story short is there's during the auditing process, there was a deficit noted for the capital projects fund. The biggest source for that is the carbide dock. Per state law, state program, every time there is a deficit, we have to submit a corrective action plan. This one is relatively simple as it's a capital fund. The project will be shored up as we move forward there, but it's not an operating, it's not a structural problem. It's just a project-specific deficit. So we would look for a motion to approve the resolution to eliminate the deficit in capital projects fund in the amount of $3,401.99, or $995. I was gonna say cents, but sorry.
Thanks, City Manager. Anybody have any questions or comments on it? Certainly, thank you to City Engineer for some of your numbers and to Kristen Collins for putting together the plan, get out of one deficit elimination plan for our retirement fund, and now we're back into a different one. But at first glance, it kind of makes you a little bit mad because it's one project, and the city certainly had a good audit report and is in good financial shape. So we appreciate everything you did. Commissioner Marvel, would you like to make a motion?
Yes. Thank you. Motion to approve the resolution to eliminate the deficit in the Capitals Project Fund in the amount of $3,401 and
See, it's contagious.
$9.95.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. Sorry, did you have
I just wanted to say I
comment or question? Did I
appreciate,
miss that?
I just appreciate that nearly the entire audience worked on this.
2 out of 3 ain't bad. Any other?
Housing Readiness Incentive Grant Program. The short of this one is there's a program through MISTA that is offering $50,000 to municipalities that that are engaged in the RRC program to essentially make structural changes to encourage housing development. Items can be updating your master plan, updating your zoning ordinance, creating other sorts of processes that we may not necessarily need. But we have the request in front of you to apply for the grant. Some of the ideas that Community Development Director Freeman and I were kind of talking about were some updates to the master, or to the zoning ordinance, including the additions of planned unit developments, which is essentially a quicker way for phase developments to receive the approvals that they need. Accessory dwelling units, to be able to make those permissible, kind of granny flats or extra houses on your property type of ideas. Also looking at where we could have more housing within the zoning layout as it is. Some of these are just ideas. We would look for some more updates within the zoning ordinance as itself. We're not gonna throw out anything like a form-based code for the entire city or anything like that, but the zoning ordinance itself was last updated back in the 60s-ish. It's not necessarily conducive with best practices at this point, so we would look to update as much as we can with the zoning ordinance for residential areas with the $50,000. And if there's other work that we can kind of tack on with the grant to help eat up that $50,000, we'll do that too. But I think the big thing that we're gonna go for is updates to the zoning ordinance as it relates to residential areas. So we look for a motion to authorize staff to submit the application with a maximum award of $50,000. And I should note, there is no match for this grant. It is $50,000 straight from MISTA.
Mark on grant. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Gage.
With the planned unit developments, it says since the overall development is approved by its inception, as buildings not constructed as part of the first phase of the phase of development are often able to bypass. Is that where they put in multiple phases and they build it in the first phase and that's the initial approval, gets all that? And then like a year later, they can do another phase and whatever and that kind of stuff?
Based off of the first round of approvals, yes. So you take, if you have there's different sizes of properties that would be eligible for planned unit developments. Some communities have a couple acres. Some communities have a minimum of 20 or 40 acres. But essentially, a developer would come in, they'd have a piece of property. They would plan out their project all the way to completion. And whether or not they're doing phases, they could do phase 1, 2 years, do phase 2.
Yeah.
But all of that is still under the original zoning and planning.
I think it's
approval.
great because then they can get the first phase done and the buildings that are not part of the first phase could then be included in subsequent phases from that first approval.
Correct.
I think it's a neat way of doing that.
It's almost like a mini zoning ordinance for a piece of property. I mean, it goes through, if there's any rezoning elements to it, it goes right to the Plan Commission and the ZBA kind of together, then it would come to the commission, but once everything's said and done, it's approved, they're off and running.
It's a smart and unique approach.
I'd like to say it's unique.
It's kind of like a subdivision.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But easier to do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. So
All
those are
right.
just some ideas, but there'll be some other updates that we'll do to it.
Any other questions or comments? Who'd like to make that motion?
Motion to authorize staff to submit an application to the MISTA Housing Readiness Incentive Grant Program for the maximum award of $50,000.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. City manager announcements and updates are blank, or we,
I don't have anything, it was a short week.
all right. I, matters presented by the public. Going once? Going twice? Item J, matters presented by the City Commission. Any Commissioner Bosphus-Rath?
Just a quick question. Any update on the form-based code since you brought that up? Do we have any? I know it was going back.
Kelly and I took some time off of it to recoup. And we have a plan that we're working on. We'll bring it to the commission, just how we feel we should move forward in a little bit and kick it off that way.
Thank you.
Great. Commissioner Marble?
This is for City Manager Chapman. Over the past few days, I've heard quite a few rumors that the city is planning on selling the puller. Can you confirm that that is just a rumor?
Yeah, I can confirm that's a rumor.
Thank you, City Manager.
Commissioner Gage?
I'm stealing off of Commissioner Habusta's notes. I want to wish his daughter Mia a happy birthday.
Well said, well said.
I also wanted to just congratulate our Downtown Development Authority Director, Stephanie Sprecher, for having a wonderful downtown festivities. It was great to see so many community members in attendance. I think I saw most of the commission out enjoying it, and everyone was well-behaved, and it looked like in the police and fire reports that we were all, as a city, well-behaved, so I'm happy to hear that we had a safe and wonderful holiday. It's good to be back, kind of felt like old times.
Good point, and certainly congratulations to Stephanie, who is done on January 15th, is it?
Yes.
At the DDA, and she'll
Correct.
be moving on to a different career path. So we thank her very much for all the work she did, and she did a fantastic job at the New Year's Festival. So, and I know she will be volunteering at city events in the future, per her promise. So, anybody else? Commissioner Bosphus-Rath.
Thank you, Your Honor. I motion to adjourn.
Support.